Pokeballs are one of the most iconic parts of the Pokemon franchise. Fittingly, many cards featuring the items have been printed over the course of the TCG's history. Today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 Pokeball cards in the Pokemon TCG. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Team Plasma Ball and other Pokeballs for specific archetypes like Rocket's Pokeball. These Pokeballs have the effect of letting you add any one Pokemon of a specific type from your deck to your hand. In the case of Team Plasma Ball, you could grab a Plasma Pokemon, a set mechanic used during the Black and White era. Rocket's Pokeball could get you any Pokemon with Dark in its name, a mechanic that's been used a few times over the course of the Pokemon TCG's history. While there have been other Pokeballs that search Pokemon of specific set gimmicks, these two saw the most competitive play over their time in the standard format. While most Pokeball item cards let you search out Pokemon, they often come at some type of consistency loss. The original Pokeball needs you to flip heads on a coin toss in order to search your deck, for instance. Technically, both Team Plasma Ball and Rocket's Pokeball have the downside of only being able to grab Pokemon with a specific game mechanic, but in decks built around those types of Pokemon, this isn't really a downside. Functionally, these types of cards give a very reasonable consistency boost to only a certain deck. A specific deck having better consistency options is a legitimate advantage over other decks in the metagame. For Team Plasma decks built around Kyurem and Deoxys EX, having access to Team Plasma Ball meant you didn't have to use as many copies of cards like Ultra Ball, which came at the cost of 2 cards in your hand in order to consistently access Pokemon cards when you needed them. For dark decks using Rocket's Pokeball, such as those built around Dark Dragonite and Dark Electrode, it provided a flexible search option that didn't count as your once per turn supporter card. With multiple Dark Electrodes in play using their Darkness Navigation Pokepower to attach Darkness energies from your deck to it, and a Dark Dragonite that lets you move Darkness energies around your Pokemon, you could enable powerful attackers like Rocket Sneasel EX. Having an archetypal Pokeball made these two decks much more consistent than they otherwise would have been without them. At number 9 on the list, we have Dual Ball. This card has the effect of letting you flip 2 coins, and for each heads add 1 basic Pokemon from your deck to your hand. While this card may seem like it would be inconsistent due to needing coin flips to be good, and only searching out basic Pokemon, the odds are actually in your favor to search at least 1 basic Pokemon. Due to how the math works out on Dual Ball's coin flips, you have a 25% chance of getting 2 basic Pokemon, a 50% chance to get 1 basic Pokemon, and a 25% chance to get no Pokemon. Being able to get a Pokemon most of the time with a chance to get 2 Pokemon instead of 1 was worthwhile for many decks playable during the multiple formats this card was printed in. During the format of its original printing in the Expedition set, Dual Ball mostly saw play in decks built around high HP basic EX Pokemon like Mewtwo EX. At the time, there weren't many supporter cards that could search out Pokemon, so Mewtwo decks enjoyed using Dual Ball since it gave them the chance to find their main attacker, while possibly getting them either extra copies of Mewtwo EX or other basic Pokemon the deck could play. During the standard format of its most recent printing in 2010 through 2012, a majority of decks were built around strong EX Pokemon like Mewtwo EX or Darkrai EX, and so Dual Ball was a popular inclusion in decks at 1 to 2 copies due to the extra consistency, even being in the winning deck list of the 2012 World Championship. Coming in at number 8, we have Great Ball, as well as the functionally identical Dusk Ball and Old Master Ball. These cards have the effect of letting you look at the top 7 cards of your deck and put any one Pokemon you find there into your hand, then shuffle the rest back into your deck. These cards may not seem that great, even though they can add any kind of Pokemon card because of the chance of not finding any in the top 7 of your deck. But despite this, they have actually had multiple stints of playability over the long history these cards have been in standard legal. There's a few criteria that most decks need to meet if they want to take advantage of Great Ball. Firstly, the deck has to play a lot of Pokemon to minimize the chance of not seeing any Pokemon in the top 7 of the deck. Secondly, the deck either has to be so fast and aggressive that you want to use Great Ball in order to find key pieces, or there has to be a lack of better search options for the strategy. During the 2005 World's Championship format, decks built around Electrode EX and its Extra Energy Bomb Pokepower used Old Master Ball to dig through their deck for either Electrode EX, attackers, or other setup Pokemon. Since Extra Energy Bomb let you attach up to 5 energy cards from your discard pile onto your Pokemon in any way you want at the cost of knocking itself out, you could quickly set up a hugely advantageous board. In the standard format of the 2008 World Championship, decks using various combinations of efficient attackers like Bennett and Gyarados used Dusk Ball and Master Ball to ensure that they would be able to quickly establish multiple evolving attackers. The most recent deck to see widespread success with Great Ball was actually a control strategy built around Chinchino and Bellaba and Bryson Man. Since Chinchino was an evolution Pokemon, it was searchable off Quick Ball, which the deck used to grab key basic Pokemon like Minchino or Zacian V. While Evolution Incense was in the format as an item that could search evolution Pokemon, control decks didn't really want to play it since the only Pokemon in the deck it could search was Chinchino. Great Ball filled a very specific niche by being an item card that could find both important basic Pokemon as well as Chinchino. Great Ball and its identical counterparts were solid, playable cards across multiple periods in the Pokemon TCG's history, and so deserves a spot on this list. In number 7, we have Cherish Ball, a card that lets you add any Pokemon GX from your deck to your hand. When Cherish Ball was printed, the standard format just underwent a rotation that removed a lot of the generic search options from the standard format. Decks running GX Pokemon as their main setup and attackers were already commonplace in the format before the printing of Cherish Ball, and they benefited greatly from an item search card being printed that allowed them to maintain a similar consistency to before cards like Nest Ball and Ultra Ball left the format. Up until the introduction of Pokemon V in the Sword and Shield expansion, almost every deck relied on Cherish Ball to bolster their ability to find key cards. One deck that took a better advantage of Cherish Ball over others was Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX. This Pokemon's Perfection ability let it use the attacks of any GX Pokemon in your discard pile as long as you had enough energy attached to it. In decks built around this Tag Team Pokemon, Cherish Ball lets you search out any Pokemon whose attack you want to use so that you could discard it later. Cards like Dedenne GX's Day Change ability let you discard your hand and draw 6 cards when you play it from your hand on your bench, letting you put many GX Pokemon you search out into your discard pile while drawing more cards. Cherish Ball also lets you search out Dedenne GX if you opened a weak starting hand or needed to dig through your deck to find a certain card to win the game. It really goes to show how strong Pokeball cards tend to be when a former staple is only number 7 on the list. At number 6, we have Hisuian Heavy Ball. This card lets you look at your prize cards and swap one basic Pokemon you find there with Hisuian Heavy Ball, then rearrange your prize cards. Hisuian Heavy Ball is good since it's a very easy card to slot into a deck that provides an extra boost to consistency. The card also provides a very unique effect in that it lets you grab out cards from your prize cards without having to take KOs on your opponent's Pokemon. In decks using certain Pokemon like Drapion V at only a single copy, having that one card in your prizes when you need it can be game losing. Hisuian Heavy Ball completely removes the risk of any key 1 of basic Pokemon being stuck in a place where you can't access it. There's really not much to say about this card other than it provides an incredible effect that boosts consistency and is usable in any deck. In number 5, we have Luxury Ball, and its spiritual processor, Master Ball. This card lets you search your deck for any Pokemon, excluding level X Pokemon, and add it to your hand, but it can't be used if you have any Luxury Balls already in your discard pile. While this card was legal in the standard formats of 2009 to 2010, it was played in a vast majority of decks at a single copy since any Luxury Balls drawn after the first would be useless. The only reason not to use a single copy of Luxury Ball in any of your decks would be that you didn't own any. The card was so powerful that in the Plasma Blast expansion, a spiritual successor was printed in Master Ball, another Pokeball that lets you add any Pokemon from your deck to your hand, and you could only play one copy of. Unfortunately, Master Ball was an A-Spec trainer card, a subtype where you could only play one A-Spec in your entire deck. While Master Ball wasn't bad, as proven by how good Luxury Ball was with the exact same effect, it couldn't compete with the best A-Spec card, Computer Search. Had a much stronger A-Spec not existed, Master Ball could have most likely seen some amount of play. For being a one-of with no downside, Luxury Ball deserves this spot on the list. Coming in at number 4, we have Level Ball, a Pokeball that lets you add any Pokemon card with 90 HP or less from your deck to your hand. While the HP restriction on Level Ball does limit the Pokemon that are searchable to early stage Pokemon or single prize Pokemon, that pool of searchable cards is extremely wide. The card also comes at no other downside. Although Level Ball has been printed into multiple different standard formats, it's seen varying levels of success in each of them since its power is directly tied to how good its search targets are. During the standard format of its first printing, Level Ball only really saw niche play in a few decks at 1 or 2 copies. Decks built around Blastoise used it to boost consistency by searching out its pre-evolved forms in Squirtle and sometimes Wartortle. Another popular deck that took advantage of Level Ball was those built around Axelgore and its Duck and Cover attack. Since Duck and Cover shuffled Axelgore and all cards attached to it back into the deck, you needed to be able to set up that attacker again. Level Ball could actually be used to search out Axelgore directly since it had 90 HP, which provided a solid boost for the deck. It fulfilled a similar role in the standard of its second printing in Ancient Origins, just boosting consistency for evolution decks. While this is certainly a good showing for why the card is strong, it isn't what gets it a spot on this list. The third time Level Ball was printed into the standard format, it fit perfectly into the Inteleon engine, an evolution line that provided an incredible amount of utility and saw widespread play as a result. Since both Sobble and Drizzile had 90 HP or less, Level Ball could search both of those pieces, and then Drizzile's Shady Dealings ability could search out any trainer card from your deck when it's evolved into. If you searched out Sobble, you could attach an energy to it and use its Keep Calling attack to put up to 3 other Rapid Strike Pokemon onto your bench, usually 3 more Sobbles. If you wanted to learn more about this engine, we actually have a video on the channel going more in depth on the topic. However, Level Ball deserves its spot on this list for how important it is in many decks after the release of the Scarlet and Violet set. Level Ball is one of the most important cards in decks built around Gardevoir EX, and is arguably a large part of why those decks succeed. These decks actually like to use its pre-evolved form, Kirlia, for its refinement ability that lets you discard 1 card to draw 2 cards every turn. Level Ball is the best way the deck can search out multiple Kirlia in order to gain a lot of card advantage over their opponents every turn with refinement. While the deck would exist without Level Ball, it shows just how powerful the card could be when a strong pool of cards it can search out exists. Starting off the top 3, we have Nest Ball. This card lets you search your deck for any basic Pokemon and put it directly onto your bench. Much like every other Pokeball on this list, Nest Ball provides a very solid consistency boost with little to no downside. Being able to set up your basic Pokemon as early as possible is very important, especially if they need to evolve. By playing Nest Ball alongside other Pokemon searching item cards, you can easily make sure that you are able to bench as many Pokemon as soon as you need to. When Nest Ball was first released, it saw a good amount of play. It wasn't until the standard format rotated to be Sun and Moon based set onwards that Nest Ball saw widespread use in pretty much every deck that needed to set up evolution Pokemon. Even decks that didn't use evolution Pokemon, the card still served as one of the best Pokemon searching items in the game, only second to another card we'll get to later on the list. In the current standard format, it sees competition with multiple other item cards like Battle VIP Pass, which can put 2 basic Pokemon from the deck onto the bench, but only works during your first turn. Even with such good competition, Nest Ball still sees regular play in top tournament decks. In the number 2 spot, we have Quick Ball. This card lets you add any basic Pokemon from your deck to your hand at the cost of discarding 1 card. While this card seems like a downgrade compared to Nest Ball since it has a discard cost, Quick Ball is actually a significant upgrade and saw play in pretty much every serious competitive deck. Not only does it provide much needed consistency to any type of deck like the aforementioned Nest Ball does, but it adds the Pokemon you search to your hand instead of putting it onto the bench. This may not seem like an important distinction to newer players, but being able to add cards to your hand instead of having to bench them immediately allows Quick Ball to have key interactions with important utility Pokemon that Nest Ball can't provide. When Quick Ball first released, the previously mentioned Dedenne GX was a key component of many decks due to the extra draw power it provided with its Dede Change ability. This ability to discard your hand and draw 6 cards only worked if the Pokemon was played from your hand. Later on, another Pokemon with a draw ability when played from the hand was introduced in Crobat V. This Pokemon was also one of the many beneficiaries to Quick Ball's discard cost, since Crobat's Dark Asset ability draws you cards until you have 6 in your hand, although it was restricted to only being able to use 1 Dark Asset ability per turn. In the expanded format, Pokemon with abilities when played from the hand were more common, as Shaman EX and Tapu Lele GX were both staples in many decks, with the former having the ability as Crobat V without the once per turn restriction, and the later searching any supporter cards from the deck when played from the hand. For many decks, Quickball's discard cost was also a significant benefit to using the card. The previously mentioned Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX wanted to have GX Pokemon discarded. Decks using Malamar use the discard cost to get Psychic Energy into the discard pile to attach later with Psychic Recharge. Zacian V decks using Metal Saucer could accelerate Metal Energy discarded off of Quickball. In the final two sets before Quickball left the standard format, decks built around Lugia V-Star used the discard cost to put Archeops into the discard pile to be put into play with Lugia's Summoning Star V-Star power. To put it simply, Quickball's supposed downside is actually a major upside for many decks, and for the ones where it isn't, the card is still a reliable consistency tool. At the number 1 spot as the best Pokeball card of all time, we have Ultra Ball. This card lets you discard 2 cards from your hand to add any Pokemon card from your deck to your hand. Ultra Ball is the only Pokeball card that gives you access to any kind of Pokemon without restriction. That alone makes having to discard 2 cards worthwhile, especially if you pair it with draw supporters like Professor's Research that let you refill your hand after discarding 2 cards. For the same reasons as discussed with Quickball, the cost of discarding 2 cards is actually an incredible upside for any deck that wants to put multiple cards into the discard pile. There really isn't much to say about Ultra Ball other than it is one of the best item cards of all time for being able to search out any Pokemon. It easily deserves the top spot on this list. And that's it for the top 10 Pokeball cards of all time. There's been a lot of powerful Pokeballs printed throughout the game's history, so if you think any should have been on this list, let us know in the comments below.